I'm James O.B. the PT, and this is my review of the Altra King MT 2.0. Watch this video and you'll learn about my likes, my dislikes, but really ultimately why I think that this shoe is an ultimate trail running, long distance hiking, as well as an obstacle course racing shoe. I'll also be comparing it to last year's model, which is the Altra King MT 1.5. First off, this shoe has plenty of volume and width in the toe box, lots of room for my toes to splay. Secondly, it's flat, pretty much no support. Those are things I look for in a shoe. I want my foot to have to work. I want to put my ankle through its natural stretch. A flat shoe without support gives me that ability. The thing I love most about this shoe, hands down, is the Vibram MegaGrip. So Vibram puts out various types of rubber, and one of their types of rubbers is the MegaGrip. This stuff lives up to its name, all right? This stuff performs excellent on wet rock, dirt, and granite slab. I would say on unnatural surfaces, it doesn't work so well. So like polished cement or marble, or say a slide if you're running after your kids at a playground, it doesn't work so well, all right? But on wet rock, dirt, slab, this stuff performs excellent. I was a little bit concerned because you see all of these cleats, okay? It limits the surface area, so you think it might not grip as well on a wet rock. But with the Vibram MegaGrip, it sure does. So by having these cleats, however, what it does is it gives you extra security if you're running over like dirt or mud or whatever. So the combination of these cleats, well, they're really called lugs. I guess they're not really cleats. And the Vibram MegaGrip, you are going to be attached to that ground and you're gonna have excellent security. This updated collar compared to the 1.5 version. So if you look here, this heel counter is kind of flimsy. This isn't very robust, all right? The newer version, definitely more robust. I have a little bit more support in here. I'm not talking about like medial longitudinal arch support, but just like support for the upper or the quarter, whatever it's called itself. So it's not flopping around. And this a little bit more of a rigid heel counter really locks the foot in place nicely. Compared to this version here, you can see that's pretty floppy. This is not. Okay, so I felt like this locked me in place a little bit more. So I've got all the room I need in the front, good lockdown security in the back. My foot is not slipping around. Like last year's version, it has these, I don't know, this like grainy fiber material in here that almost works like shingles stacked in place. So if I push down, listen to the sound. And I pull back, you hear the difference in sound. So what those fibers do with this grain, it basically locks your sock in place so your foot doesn't slip out. So between the collar, the more supportive heel counter, my foot's in place nicely. They've also changed where they put the Velcro strap. So if you look here, this is down lower. So it didn't really do that great of a job of pushing your foot back into the shoe to lock that heel in place. If you see here how it's lower down, or I should say closer to the ankle, it does a better job of locking the foot in place. With that being said, I don't actually really use this strap, and if it were up to me, I would get rid of it. Nevertheless, if I was doing a lot of obstacle course racing, going through some like serious mud, and I was afraid the shoe might come off, I'd probably lock it in place, but I'm typically a trail runner and I do my long distance hiking in these. The 2.0 version here comes with these drainage ports, as you can see right here, okay? So these are great if you're like totally soak your shoe, if you're running through a river and you want your shoe to dry out a little bit quicker. It definitely works. Things dry out quicker. However, to be quite honest, I personally don't like them because if you do step in a small puddle, what ends up happening is the water actually just goes up into the shoe. So when I was hiking or trail running, I typically would try to avoid small puddles, whereas in last year's version, it didn't really bother me as much. So if you think you're gonna get soaked all the time, yeah, it's a great feature. But if you're not, I don't really love it. And the other thing I didn't really care for about it was in every Altra I've owned before, I was able to take out the midsole, okay? And there was this nice smooth EVA right in there, EVA, this foam, that my sock could just like lock into. It provided a nice coefficient of friction. In this shoe, it has this little mesh, you can see there. So you really need to run with an insole in place, all right? And so I typically like shoes without the insoles in it because I feel like I have a little bit more ground feel. With that being said though, I don't know. I don't think it really affected my performance in any way, having the midsole, the insole in place. And because the shoe has a little bit more volume to it, I didn't feel like my foot was cramped at all. As many of you know, I'm a huge fan of minimalist footwear. However, if I'm doing some long distance hiking or a longer trail run, I definitely like to have a little bit more protection. The nice thing about this shoe is it's not super thick, and the midsole is actually relatively firm. And so I still feel like I have a certain amount of connection and I'd say ground feel, which gives me security that I'm not gonna just roll my ankle. So with regards to sizing, I went up a half size. So this is an 8.5 and this is a 9. And if you look here, I'm gonna try and make them look nice and even. You can see that shoe is practically the same size. If this is bigger, it's hardly bigger. I followed some advice of some other reviewers and went up to half size, and the shoe fit me well. Little piece of advice, don't put these insoles in the dryer. I learned that out the hard way. So after a long distance hike, the shoe was like totally dirty. I put them both in the dryer, not even on too high, and this thing just shriveled right up. The good news is, because my insole was still in great shape from not using it from my last year's version, I just slipped it into this shoe here, and it fits right in. Which kind of goes to show that the 8.5 here and the 9 here are really basically the same size. So I have purchased the Altra Gaiters, and I used the Gaiter trap right here, and it was great. So it definitely helped keep out some of the debris, and you'll see kind of in the thumbnail photo, as well as some of the videos and pictures at the end of this where I was using the shoe up in the Adirondacks. The Gaiter just served me really nicely. Stick around, watch the rest of this video. You'll actually get to see this shoe in action. As always, if you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, do whatever you gotta do to learn more about other great recommended products, as well as some good advice for just good old-fashioned proper movement. I'm James O.B., the PT, and thanks so much. Okay, so here's a perfect example of the Vibram MegaGrip in action on these Altras. So right here, you can see this is wet rock. I have amazing grip here. There's even a little bit of moss there, and this thing is just, these shoes are just gripping like no other. So I have such confidence as I'm walking here that I'm not going to slip on this wet rock. And that is, I would say, hands down my favorite part of the shoe. Okay, so one of the benefits of the shoe is that it also has some drainage ports here on the bottom. So this was pretty sketchy coming across, and yes, I did put my leg up to here in mud. So one of the nice things is if I do get my shoe pretty wet, yeah, it's soaked, it's not dry, but then it will dry sort of quick, you know, or at least it won't be as heavy, because right on the bottom there, there's these drainage ports. So it can be a little inconvenient if you're stepping in small water like this, okay, or like a small puddle, because water can actually come in. But if you're going to be getting wet and like doing an obstacle course race, it's actually seems like a pretty useful feature. So this is some of the stuff, like if you're running over, you can see there's a ton of these little rocks in here like this, where like if I'm running in a lot of my traditional minimalist shoes, I'd probably be okay, but it'd have to slow me down a little bit. Having just a little bit of that extra protection that these Kings provide can totally help make my feet not hurt so much. So this is a pretty cool section of trail I just discovered, and these guys are performing nicely. So with all this, these wet leaves, you know, it's nice to have like an actual like cleat there. You can see these big lugs. They work like a nice cleat. Let's see if I can get a better shot there. Oops. So those cleats, they grip nicely. I mean, this is pretty sketchy stuff here. Like these leaves with these rocks. You don't really know what's underneath. So the MegaGrip doesn't really do any good on leaves, but the cleats themselves actually like dig into the surface. So kind of a cool area. Getting lost before I have to get back to work here in a few. So Jonesy here is wearing the Altra Kings 1.5, which also have the Vibram MegaGrip. Just let him climb right up this. This is actually really steep. The video might not give it justice, but we're moving up in the world. So he's got the King 1.5s. I got the 2.0s rocking. And look, he doesn't even really need to use his hands. So we just came from way down in there, Panther Gorge, and we just summited Haystack. This might be the coolest place. There's Jonesy. The coolest summit I've ever done. I mean, look at this. Just amazing. So then the plan is we're going to summit that guy down there. That's a little haystack. Then we're gonna come down into the valley, hit that bad boy, Marcy. That's the highest in the Adirondacks. Come over. There's Skylight, and we're gonna go back down to camp in Panther Gorge there. So this is pretty amazing stuff.